It's 5:15. It's 5:15. If we could go ahead and bring this meeting to order, please. This is the June 9th, 2016 meeting of the Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Chris Jordan, and I am the chairman of this commission. If we could, I would remind all the commission members and anyone present, if you wouldn't mind, to silence your cell phones and electronics and things. That would be great. If we could, we will start with introductions, and we will start with our councilman.
Good evening, everyone. Carlos Graham, City Council Liaison.
Mike Lester.
Jack Deacon.
Dave Nunn.
Ian Stratton, City Staff.
Chris Yarnell.
Dean Dutoy.
Bunny Tricky Cotton.
Eric Barron, City Staff.
Brian Wolford, City Staff.
Thank you. Procedural matters. The city code authorizes 9 regular members and 3 alternates. Alternates are designated to vote upon the absence or disqualification of a regular member. A quorum of 5 members or alternates is necessary to conduct business. I do believe we have a quorum tonight, and the following members, regular members, are present: Bunny Tricky Cotton, Jack Deacon, Dean Dutoy, Michael Lester, David Nunn, and Chris Yarnell. The following regular members are absent: Bob George, Dale Vaughn, Ron Fitzwater is an alternate, and Blake Marcus is an alternate. Are there any members who are disqualifying themselves from voting on any agenda item this evening? Seeing none. I think tonight the only case that we have is a city-initiated case, and that is case number P16005, a zoning text amendment. That is for planning staff to amend Chapter 35, Section 35-28, the land use matrix, and Section 3592 definitions with respect to cemeteries. Eric, have we received any correspondence on this? And I'm assuming there's no need for a continuance.
Yep. We have not received any correspondence on it. No, there's no need for a continuance, and I will represent and present the case.
Okay, thank you. If you would you please read the format of the hearing and order of testimony?
Certainly. I would like to briefly describe the procedures of the Planning Commission. The proceedings of the meeting are being recorded, so when you speak, please step to the microphone and give your name and address for the record. After a brief introduction of the case by city staff, we will ask to hear from any supporters of the request. We will ask to hear from any opponents of the request, and then we'll be asked to hear from anyone else who wishes to speak on this particular case. Then city staff will describe their proposal, make recommendations on their request in order to reduce the time necessary to hear the information. Reference to printed materials, including the staff reports, applicable findings, ordinances, and statutes shall not be read into the record unless directed by the commission. And the commission will then close testimony from the floor. And then prior to motion or discussion on the case, the commission will discuss and make its decision publicly with reason. The form of the motion shall be positive, and that is, the motion shall be made to accept the request as presented, or with any modifications, stipulations, or conditions. Final vote taken, ayes in favor, nays opposed, and chairman shall announce the results of the vote. And the following documents are entered as exhibits for all items under consideration at this meeting: chapters of the city code as amended, the comprehensive plan and land use map, copies of applications under consideration, a list of property owners to whom notices were sent. Actually, there were no notices sent out. The affidavit of publication of the public notice in the newspaper, copies of drawings, plans, renderings under consideration, letters or memoranda from staff, the staff reports, minutes of proceedings, letters, photo, memoranda, or other materials submitted by the public or the applicant, and the rules of procedure for the Jefferson City, Missouri Planning and Zoning Commission. These items are all public record and are available for inspection in the Department of Planning and Protective Services or through the Office of the City Clerk. And please be advised that any items that are presented this evening to the Planning and Zoning Commission become the property of the Commission. This includes any photographs, drawings, renderings, petitions, and letters. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I would like to remind the commission members and anyone testifying to please come to the microphone. And for the commission members, if you would, make sure to turn your microphones on when using them. Next, we need to have an adoption of the agenda as printed or amended.
To approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Staff has provided us with the minutes for the March 10, 2016 meeting. Huh? Is it April?
We didn't have, yeah.
Okay. April 14th meeting. If you would, take a minute to look through those. If there is no changes or anything like that, I will entertain a motion.
I'd move that we approve the minutes as presented.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Eric, I think you mentioned that we do not have any correspondence regarding any of the cases this evening.
That's correct.
Okay. With that being said, we will move to our first public hearing and new business. It is case P16005, zoning code text amendment. This request was filed by planning staff to amend the text of Chapter 35, zoning, Section 3528, land use matrix, and Section 35-92, definitions with respect to the following: establishment of cemetery as a special exception use in the RS, RA, RD, and N-O zoning districts, and change from a permitted to a special exception use in the RC district. Also amending the definition of cemetery to include related accessory structures and inclusion of funeral homes when operated within the boundaries of a cemetery. Eric, I will let you tell us a little bit more about this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is a follow-up from, this was presented to you in a preliminary version during the April meeting. And at that time it was presented that we would advertise it formally as a public hearing and bring it forward to you at the next Planning Zoning Commission meeting. And so here we are. It has been advertised as a public hearing item. What occurred was in discussions with the owner of a local cemetery, we found that our zoning code is really not structured properly to address the new or expanded uses within a cemetery type environment. What I mean by that is that our zoning code only allowed cemeteries as basically as a special exception use within the RU zoning district and permitted in the RC zoning district. So we surveyed the existing cemeteries within Jefferson City and found out that they're all located in different districts than what they're actually allowed in under our zoning code. And so a zoning code amendment is really needed in order to not only to allow the existing cemeteries to exist as a something other than a non-conforming use, but also to put in a process for that if there's ever future growth or changes within the cemetery, that there's an established process within the zoning code to allow that to occur. The process that we're proposing is a special exception process for all cemeteries. That's what it is currently within the RU zoning district. And so what we're proposing is to expand that special exception designation for all of the residential zoning districts, including the rural and the RC, the conservation district, so that cemeteries would be a special exception use within all of those districts. That would accommodate all of the existing cemeteries in town and allow them a process to locate either structures within their boundaries or to expand, or new cemeteries to be located in the community. That process, as a special exception process, would be to file an application for a special exception use permit, which would come in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission as a public hearing item. Surrounding property owners within 185 feet of the cemetery would be noticed, and then after Planning and Zoning would go on to the City Council. And so it's a very high level of review for a cemetery type of use that we're proposing. So if a cemetery in town wanted to locate an accessory structure, and that's where the second half of this proposal, the definition, wanted to locate one of those items within their boundaries, they would have to propose it as a special exception permit, bring it in front of this body in a public hearing format, and then on to the city council. So the second part, to redefine cemeteries to include other accessory structures such as crematoriums, mausoleums, sales facilities, maintenance facilities, and also mortuaries and funeral homes. We did a little bit of homework on this and found that it's fairly common for funeral homes to be located on cemetery grounds. And we thought of various ways to try to accommodate something like that, and zoning a portion of the cemetery commercial in order to accommodate a funeral just didn't seem like a very good, or a funeral home didn't seem like a very good idea. So actually allowing a funeral home to locate on a cemetery seems pretty reasonable from that staff level. But again, they would have to go through that special exception permit process, and that building that is constructed would really be limited to being a funeral home, only. So. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. It is a public hearing item, so if you could open testimony for anyone who wishes to speak, and that's that.
One question. Going about change land use dedicated to the burial of the dead. Does that include animals? Some areas, pet cemeteries are.
We don't have any. No, I don't think we have any regulations regarding the burial of an animal.
Someone wants to set up a dedicated pet cemetery. It goes through the special exception process.
Probably what I would direct them to. I would say that would be the process to go through. If might be a very small cemetery, or obviously if it's a portion of an existing one, then it's already kind of in place until you start locating structures there.
Janice. Janice, since we're in the middle of this case and you've arrived, do you think we should let you introduce yourself if we're going to? Thank you.
Thank you. Janice McMillan, Director of Planning and Protective Services.
Thank you. Janice arrived a few minutes ago, so she's been here for the majority of this case. We wanted to be aware that she's here. Do any other commission members have any questions for the city staff at this point? All right. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this request in the audience? If so, please come to the podium and give your name and address for the record. Seeing none. Is there anyone present in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this request? If so, please come to the podium and give your name and address. Seeing none. Is there anyone who would like to just speak on this request? If so, please come forward. Seeing none. At this point, we will close testimony. Eric, do you have anything else you would like to address?
I don't think I have anything else to address. I'd be happy to answer any questions. The recommended form of the motion would just be for approval of the proposed zoning code amendment.
All right, thank you. With that being said, would any of the commissioners like to make a motion?
I'd move that we accept the proposed amendment as presented by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Eric, this will be forwarded to the city council, I believe?
Yes, it will go on to the city council, again, as a public hearing item in front of them on July 18th. That meeting takes place at 6 p.m. in this room.
And once again, the community is asked to come and speak then if they have any positions regarding that.
Certainly, yes.
Yep.
Any comments, and they could also submit comments in writing to the city clerk at that point.
Very good. Thank you. We do not have any other public hearings or items of normal business, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, we'll move on to other business. We have a presentation on the Capitol Avenue and East High Street rezoning and overlay district plans. And Eric, that brings up a good question. Was there a letter of correspondence sent to you or the city from the Jefferson City Area Board of Realtors?
Yes, we have, and I'll address that a little bit. There has been some public involvement with that, and I'll give you just a brief overview.
Okay. I was privy to an email and just dawned on me about that, so thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes. And so what I was planning this evening was to give you an update where we are with the Central East Side Neighborhood Plan. I've kind of titled it the Capitol Avenue and East High Street Plan, so just a portion of that larger plan. We have conducted a number of neighborhood meetings, here in this room, and neighborhood informational meetings. We presented items, mailed out notices to the entire planning area there along Capitol Avenue and East High Street, and invited them to City Hall and gave a series of 3 different dates that they could attend, whichever meeting best fit their schedule. So April 21st, 26th, and 28th, we hosted people here at City Hall and gave a formal presentation about what the staff level plans for this Capitol Avenue and East High Street district are. We also presented to the Historic Preservation Commission on May 10th. We got a lot of good comments back from those meetings, both verbally at the meetings and also in writing, either at or after the meetings. Some very detailed comments that go on for pages. And so we wrote up a summary of comments and posted that on our website, and that's really where we are right now. Absorbing the comments that have been submitted and trying to restructure the plan in order to address those comments. We got some pretty strong comments on one key component within the plan, which I'll present to you this evening. But first, start out with this slide, and many of you have seen this slide many times, and this is the main page out of the Central East Side Plan. It shows the different areas that are planned for different types of uses. And again, the areas we're focusing on really is the Capitol Avenue, the purple area, and the East High Street, the red area there. This plan was adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission in 2006 as a component of the city's comprehensive plan. And so this has been formally adopted into the city's comprehensive plan. The study areas that we've been dealing with, Adams Street over here to the side, all the way to just past Chestnut Street, just past Ash Street, and Prison Brews and the Ash Street entertainment area from east or west to east, and then McCarty Street all the way up to State Street, north to south, as you can see on the slide there. And there's a couple different reasons why this plan is important for the area. One is the zoning in the area is just kind of a checkerboard pattern, a patchwork quilt we've referred to it as. So we'd like to unify the zoning, give it a little bit more unity, and then also to establish some overlay districts to give some design requirements for buildings that are going to be located or that are located within this area. The zoning plan that we presented at the public meetings is this plan, and that there essentially be 2 new zoning districts created, mixed use 1 and a mixed use 2. The mixed use 1 being more office oriented, and the mixed use 2 being more retail and restaurant oriented. And as you can see, the mixed use 2 to really be oriented on High Street, and the 1 would be oriented on Capitol Avenue with a few islands there. And then also overlay districts on top of that, and it's kind of hard to see this, but one for Capitol Avenue, and then a second one for East High Street, and then the High Street one actually include this island of property right across, or on Lafayette Street, right across from the prison walls. It's kind of a different character than the rest of Capitol Avenue. And so when we presented to the public, this is one of the key items that I think received a lot of comment on. And the idea was that, at least for the High Street area, the High Street district, the concept of trying to push buildings, new buildings that are constructed, to the street line, so that new buildings that would be built along High Street would actually be required to be constructed at the right-of-way line, very similar to a downtown type of environment, along the entirety of High Street. and this slide gives a really good overview of what I mean by that. Okay, and so this is the block of East High Street between Lafayette and Marshall Street. And on the south side of the street, it's very kind of reminiscent of a downtown environment. You got Whaley's drugstore right there, and pretty much every building on this street or the south side is pushed up toward the street. It's got the front wall right at that street line. Some of them are houses that have had additions built onto the front of them, but it's a nice clean line. The only hole in it being for driveway for parking. And then you go across the street on the north side, and you've got a few buildings like that. But then a good portion of the block is old residential houses that are backed up from that line. And so the Central East Side plan would actually call for this area that when new houses, if something were to occur to one of these houses and it had to be rebuilt, if it were to burn and needed to be rebuilt, that it at the street line. And I think that was a little bit, there's a lot of concern about that from the people that attended the public meetings. The idea that, say this center house were something were to occur to it, that a new structure on that lot would actually have to be built at this front build line. So we got some strong comments on that, and decided to go back, of course, and look at the plan. And so some of the updated, some of the things, directions we're headed with this is first to change the Central East Side plan a little bit to accommodate some of these comments and what people now see as kind of the future of this area. And I'll get to that with a few visual slides. And also to treat Capitol Avenue a little bit separately. There's a lot of interest in preserving the houses that front on Capitol Avenue, and once you get away from that a little, the character, the level of design goes down a little. There's still a lot of interest in preserving the houses in the neighborhood, but not quite as much as as what people feel is necessary along the actual houses on Capitol Avenue. And then, as far as High Street is concerned, focus on the existing nodes. There's several areas along High Street that are commercial and built to the street line, and a lot of areas that are not. And so try to separate those out a little bit within the plan and the regulations for the area, and then put a process in there that you can switch from one zoning, one overlay district to another, in order to allow street front development to occur one property at a time if necessary. And so what I mean by that is, well, first we looked at existing buildings along or in the neighborhood that are already built at the street. And so that's what this slide shows. We mapped that out and kind of highlighted in yellow the general areas, those existing commercial nodes, buildings that are already built at the street line. So kind of start from there and work out in terms of forcing buildings to the street. And and this is our current thoughts in terms of kind of a revised overlay district and zoning plan for the area. And so I'd like to briefly just touch on the few items here that are noteworthy. First, starting over here on the left-hand side of the screen, there are a few areas that just really staff don't believe need to be included within this overlay district or mixed-use zoning. The Baptist building and some of the buildings surrounding it, some of the buildings on High Street. And so actually pushing them out of the district and getting them into the downtown commercial district. So actually a slight expansion of the downtown commercial district to include some of the properties in this area. Also, properties up here in the northwest corner of the Capitol Avenue area are zoned office commercial, or I think one of them's PUD. And actually switch it to an office commercial zoning, again keeping it out of the area and getting a zoning district that already works for that building there. And then as far as and then one other item, the Chirac Hearst building, which is kind of an island unto itself. It's a little bit of an odd building. It was rezoned to a C3, a downtown commercial, many years ago. I think it really needs to be looked at separately from this plan. And so leave it alone, leave it the way it is, and work with the property owners on future redevelopment of that. But then the rest of the area divided up into essentially 3 different overlay districts. The overlay districts, again, being the the design requirements for the buildings that would be located in that area. So one overlay district focused on Capitol Avenue, and so all the properties, all those residential type of houses that front Capitol Avenue, would be located within a Capitol Avenue overlay district. That would be to put it mildly, basically a very strong set of regulations regarding design of buildings within that area. And then the blue area, I've labeled it a conservation district. The labels may change in the future, but essentially most of the, if not all of the other residential style of houses within this area. Again, putting in design requirements that really preserve that brick facade and porch and that old style design that everyone really likes in that area in place, but separating it out from the more commercial areas. And so that's where the orange areas come in. So these are focused on the existing commercial nodes, those existing areas where buildings were pushed up to the street. And so establishing that as a pedestrian-oriented type of overlay district where buildings, should and if ever redeveloped, would be pushed up toward the street and contain some of the design requirements, design items that you would be typical of a downtown building. And then, like I said, a process to switch from one overlay district to the other, to rezone your property from blue to orange, for example, if you come in with an idea on how to add to the existing street front network within this area. That's our current thoughts on it. Our timeline, we've pushed back and we'll probably push back a little bit more. I feel like there's still more work and homework in drafting up some of these overlay district regulations. In particular, can be fairly complex. We're going from 2 overlay districts to 3, and so that'll take a little bit of work as well. Originally we were hoping to bring some of this back to you at the July meeting as kind of a formal public hearing. We pushed that back to August, and actually we'll probably have to push it back to September in order to really put that stuff together, give the public an opportunity to comment on this plan, and that's where we are right now. With that, I'd really be interested if you have any strong feelings one way or another on this idea of actually amending the Central East Side Plan. So the Central East Side Plan is a document that was adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission as a component of the comprehensive plan. What we would likely be doing is putting together an amendment to that document, an appendix, so to speak, to attach to it, to amend it based on on some of the thoughts that have been flushed out at these public meetings, and then also that document is about 10 years old, and times have changed a little. So,
Eric, is it safe for me to assume that all of the property owners within this district area were notified by you or the city so that they knew that these public hearings were going on and had an opportunity to come speak and voice their opinions, whether it's at that meeting or write you letters or so on and so forth?
That is correct. We did send out notices to all the property owners within the area, telling them of the initial public meetings. We would also, that was a preliminary step to get the plan out there, present it to them, and get that feedback from them. Prior, once the plan is brought in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission as a public hearing item, there would also be a formal notification that would have to be sent to the neighborhood, and so ultimately they would be getting at least 2 letters from us.
Great. Do any of the commission members have any questions for Eric or other city staff? David, go ahead.
Eric, if you switch to the M1 and MU1, MU2, will that help with any existing legally non-conforming uses that tend sometimes to be a problem in those areas?
Yes. So going back to the zoning map, it's kind of a mishmash of zoning in that area. There's a lot of office uses that were granted with conditional use permit back when that was allowed within the zoning code. I believe there's some that I have been unable to locate actual, any type of permit that actually granted the office the ability to locate there. But yes, it would kind of formalize it and permit those office uses outright, and so it would remove any question as to whether they're grandfathered or not.
Jack, go ahead.
Why is it gerrymandered there right close to Cherry Street? All of a sudden it goes up and skips 3 or 4 houses, maybe 3 or 4 to the cemetery, up like that, comes straight down when the blue line comes up to Harvey, and it's always a hard, sharp turn, 90 degrees.
Oh, over here, down here.
There's only a handful of residential houses, why are they left out of that?
And so I think that goes back to the original plan, and so the consultants that put together this plan separated out into various neighborhoods, right?
Except it off in the middle of the
I think that,
cut it off at Lafayette, cuts it off between Lafayette and Cherry.
yeah, I think that they tried to draw a line in there where it switches from kind of a on McCarty Street. It switches from kind of a commercial feel to all residential, and so that area is actually this tan color, and of course the far left-hand side of my screen where it shows that tan color and what would be allowed there does not show up in this projector, but it has a different kind of set of recommendations for that specific area that's more residential.
And then next to that is a residential house converted into an office building for an attorney, and I think when the rest of them are residential, it looks like they put the residential house that's used as an office and also the old children's market there, the Barkey had, and then the rest of it cut out.
Well, it's
Straight lines, I think it's silly to cut it off. I mean, it's just, all over town, we get.
Jack, turn your microphone on, please.
I find it silly to have these lines that aren't straight. We've done that with a lot of our districts. We make big loops up around, and it just doesn't look right sometimes. The public says, "Why did you leave that out? Just put a block there."
Well, there's one item that that I think is should be pointed out, that first the study area was based on the original plan, so we started with that document. Okay.
It's just a question. I mean, I understand the history of it, but sometimes, just sometimes.
So at the intersection McCarty Street and Lafayette, there are some commercial buildings that are on the south side of that street that are not included within the study area, and it might be worth considering putting them into the same overlay district type requirements, or regulations that would be put in place at street front type development, at least for the properties immediately surrounding that intersection. That might be something worth pointing out within all of
The
this.
whole north side of the McCarty Street there. Except
All
for
of
the
this
stuff
over
that was
there.
torn down. What was torn down, which is now a vacant lot, 'cause that was the old locker house and converted to engineer place. Yeah,
Right
that's
there.
a vacant lot now, and the rest of it's residential.
Yeah, so that vacant lot would be included in the area. But then the first house after that would not.
And so if a developer who has been trying to buy it from those existing houses, he's going to have to deal with 2 different things there if he buys it. If he buys that vacant lot and then plus the 2 residential houses, he's not going to have a clean slate to work with. Right there. Because I know that has been tried. They couldn't come to terms with the money, but there had been some talk of buying a couple of those, and the other piece, a big vacant piece, put it all together and develop it.
And so,
I think that way, there may, or is it just easy to do?
well, in that case, and that happens in other areas of town too. You might have a residential property next to commercial, and so a rezoning case might be the way to resolve that, to bring it all together into one.
Easily do it, just take the line right up and color it in and make it clean. Yeah, I know, it just,
Eric, I think maybe what Jack ultimately is saying is, does it make sense to maybe go on up to like Cherry Street or something and cut it off on a right-of-way or something instead of in a mid-block or something like that? And obviously, if you're going to be looking at all the comments from the constituents and the owners and things like that, maybe it does make a little bit of sense to look at his ideas and get it to a good break point, I guess I'd say. Obviously, I realize at some point you've got to make a decision with what the neighborhood's doing, but maybe overall that maybe would make a little more sense. That fair to
It just
say?
did to me. I couldn't understand why they stopped it right there after the vacant lot.
Right. Something to take into consideration.
Take that into consideration. I will say that we have looked at that. We generally try to make those or how do I put it, to keep buildings on a street, across the street from each other, kind of the same situation, same zoning, rather than draw the line right down the middle of the street so the two sides are opposite things. I think if you look at
But in the case of McCarty Street, we all know it's getting to be a busy roadway. So, to move further east to Cherry and then stop it, and then the south side of McCarty to be the other zoning probably makes a little bit of sense. So, is there any other comments for staff from the commissioners at this point? Eric, I think it would be, and I'm assuming it's okay with you all, that we will ask if there's anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this request tonight, even though
Most
we're not in a
certainly,
public
yep.
hearing. Okay, with that being said, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this request? If so, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Seeing none. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this request? If so, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Seeing none. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this request? Seeing none. Okay, with that being said, Eric, you don't at this point need anything from us, correct?
No, it's just an update of where we are on it. A little bit better idea in terms of our timeline. I think it's stretching out a few more months than what we were originally hoping for. Hope to get it all together. We'll obviously continue to give you updates at meetings between now and when we formally bring it forward for adoption by this body. And of course that formal process includes notifying all the property owners within the area that would be affected by it. And so it could be a very large public hearing.
Okay. In the meantime, if there's anyone in the public or watching tonight or whatever the case may be, they still have the opportunity to address any concerns to you or to planning staff, correct?
That is correct. On the Planning Division webpage, there is a section for projects, and that is where we are posting the documents associated with this project, which includes what we presented at the neighborhood meetings, an overview of the comments that we have received to date, and then we're trying to keep the timeline updated, and we'll update that to reflect our current timeline of again hopefully bringing this. The end result, bringing it to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Our target right now is September. So.
Very good. Our next item of business is scheduled reports. We have Environmental Quality Commission. Michael.
The commission did not meet last month, so I don't have a report.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is there any other items that we have, Eric? With that being said, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight.
Thank you.